Welcome to Mormon Book Reviews, where an evangelical encounters the restoration. I'm your host, Steven Pynakker, and as many of you know, Mom and I went through quite a lot of calamities this past year, including going through three hurricanes. And it really meant a lot to us. And of course, then my mom broke her hip. I lost my hearing, my right ear. So we've gone through a lot. And one of the things I think is so important about this community that we have created here is all the love and support that Mom and I have felt during these times of needs. And then there's other people in this community that are also suffering, and people in this community that ha had to leave their homes and escape or have lost their homes because of these horrible fires that are happening in Los Angeles. And one of those individuals who's joining us tonight is Jaxon Washburn, my good friend, a well-regarded scholar who is a really fascinating person who does a lot of good, great interfaith work, has a lot of expertise in the Armenian Christian religion, and really has brings a lot to the table. Is really one of the rising stars in the Mormon scholarly community as well. Jaxon Washburn in the house. How you doing today, sir?
Well, you're too kind as always, Steve, but it's great to be here. I wish it was under maybe different happier circumstances, but I also felt like it was very important to join and just be able to share an update on what things are looking like in Los Angeles.
And I appreciate you doing this. You just reached out earlier today, and we just kind of set this up in the last 30 minutes, and just thought we'd use this as an opportunity to share with our audience the plight of people. Many of you probably know somebody that's in Los Angeles that maybe lost their home or has to escape. And Jaxon, I just wanted to first, before we get into too many details, how are you and your wife doing?
We're doing well. We're tired. We're definitely feeling grateful for the outpouring of support. We feel grateful for the circumstances that we found ourselves in the sense that um, at least with respect to where we live, we haven't been under direct risk of the fires coming our way, but there was plenty of time there where, we were on standby effectively, and it was kind of a sobering experience to gather 4 or 5 of our most, treasured personal belongings each in order to have them ready just in case something changed for the worse. So there are many other people, however, who have experienced a lot more hardship at this time. Members of the church, members of many faiths, people of no faith, rich, poor, everyone in between. The devastation from the multiple fires occurring simultaneously has been, uh, for anyone paying attention to the news, largely overwhelming for the local response, and is still something that is an active situation threatening the well-being and lives of many people. So there, I mean, I think the last number I saw, this was a couple days ago, but we're talking about well over 100,000 people evacuated um, uh, in numerous communities. And we've had friends and loved ones in the area that during that time, checking in on them. Sometimes there's gaps in communication, and so yeah, it's been a sobering experience for sure. But we're very grateful for the uh, uh, blessings that we've seen in the moment, and there's a lot of work to be done in terms of still supporting those who are in need.
So, Jackson, just so from my understanding, looking at your timeline, you guys have evacuated to San Diego and are heading out to Utah, Zion, to spend some time there because classes at UCLA have been suspended until February 17th. So you've decided to,
Uh,
or they won't be using just the
yeah,
facility,
they'll be online effectively,
online
and
courses, but
yeah.
so you thought you'd
hmm
go to, so you're going to end up in Utah tomorrow or the next day?
Yeah, so as far as the fire timeline went, I believe it was Tuesday, before noon, when the Palisades fire broke out. And this one I was actually able to see at the time between classes at UCLA, the smoke coming on the horizon. It looked very surreal, and there were a number of students that were also, taking pictures and kind of captivated by it. I did a video call with my wife Rebecca at the time just to show her like, whoa, this looks like a big deal. And into that night, it just turned into something really out of control. And it was the perfect storm of factors in terms of the dry winter season. Haven't been a lot of rains lately. And then with the Santa Ana winds, effectively in different areas, we're talking hurricane force winds up to 100 miles an hour. I believe at times the fire was spreading as rapidly as 2 football fields a minute. So imagine even under the best of circumstances, trying to, as far as first responders go, deal with and contain that fire. It got out of control really quickly and then was only compounded by the multiple other fires that broke out as well. So, um, uh, as far as last week went, there were a couple days where we were watching, had our phones on, notifications on, waiting for instruction from the authorities, and a lot of uncertainty there, a lot of devastation. But it was Thursday when we took off to San Diego. We were able to leave with some friends and relocate temporarily just because of how bad the air quality was. And given that that air quality doesn't seem to be changing in anytime soon, the fires still aren't contained. Um, with classes moving online, we thought it would be best to go to Utah for the next week. So we feel fortunate to be taken care of and be in circumstances where um, uh, we're not in immediate danger ourselves at this point. But like I said, there's still many people who need a lot of help, and especially those who might not have transportation, might not be able to leave the Los Angeles area. It's a place with a large unhoused population.
Mhm.
So my heart really goes out to those who have lost their homes, who have been displaced, who are stuck there. Yeah.
So and then actually in a few minutes here, Jackson is actually going to talk about some ways that you can help in this situation to make some donations that we'll leave in the description. But before we talk about that, I just wanted to know, just for somebody who's boots on the ground, did you personally were you able to get close to see some of the devastation or see? I mean, how close were you to this, and were you able to, or did you pretty much just see everything like on TV like
I mean,
everybody else?
I mean, in terms of the Palisades fire, I live in Santa Monica, so that's an area that is has been on kind of evacuation notice. Um, given various warnings, parts of Santa Monica have needed to be evacuated. So I've been able at times to go on top of the parking structure in my university housing complex to, with binoculars, see the fires, see the smoke. Of course, we didn't go out, maybe storm chaser wise and witness the devastation firsthand. But we were within miles of the fires themselves. They were visible and at different points, depending on when the wind was blowing. The concern was at any point it could jump from the hills down into start really getting into LA itself. So you could say we were on the border of that affected area.
So just I know
Certainly
that there's
close
a
enough
lot
to
of
be
those.
concerned.
Were you able to see like those planes that go and get the water and then spray the water onto the fire? Were you
Yes.
able to witness that?
Um, uh, let's see. I don't know that I saw because we're not close enough to the ocean
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah,
to see
okay.
them, but I certainly saw planes flying overhead
Right, so you
that
saw
would
the
fit
planes.
that description,
Okay.
and helicopters as well. It
And I
didn't
imagine
see
just a
any.
ton of like what National Guard and emergency service trucks, a lot of different I mean, I imagine you saw a lot of different
Yeah, I
vehicles
mean,
everywhere.
a couple days there, especially with the smoky conditions, and the way that that impacts the sunlight. At times there was an eerie quiet, or just like a different kind of hum to the city. We live close to a freeway, And so typically, we're used to a certain noise
Yep.
register, and that was disrupted at times. And in other respects, the combination of the light and the smoke, you can imagine almost this like eerie golden hour light condition, but
Hmm.
at like 9, 10 a.m., right?
Yeah. Okay.
And with the high winds as well, a lot of um, branches knocked down from the trees, fewer cars on the road, not as many folks going outside because of the air quality.
Yeah, people don't think about that, but you're saying that with all that smoke, of course, I remember last year heading out to or the year before last now heading out to Rochester for the and they had all those Canadian wildfires, and I
That's
remember
right. That's
not
right.
actually experiencing it in Rochester, but when we landed in Baltimore as a connection
Ah,
flight, the sky was just, it was just, you couldn't believe all the smoke and everything. So was it is it
yeah, yeah.
pretty oppressive and stuff? I
Oh,
mean,
I would say so. I mean, and that's one of the reasons that we'll be leaving. I've had some respiratory concerns in the
yeah.
past, and um, yeah, it would be best for my health and to avoid the area. But we're also investing in getting heavy duty masks, an air purifier for our home. Um, yeah.
So I just want to know, do you know of anybody are you aware of any? Oh, actually, actually, David Boyce and I were talking about over lunch today. You had posted that thing about that society that lost their building.
Mm.
Maybe talk about that group a little bit.
Well, I can say first generally, among the many thousands of structures that have been destroyed in the different blazes, between the Palisades fire, the Eaton fire, and several smaller ones, um, you not only have homes, you have businesses, and of course, you have places of worship. And so there are various Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and other centers of faith
Yeah.
that have been effectively destroyed.
Hmm.
Among them was the largest archive in the world for the Theosophical Society.
Yeah.
For those who aren't familiar, the Theosophical Society was kind of originates in the late 19th, early 20th century with and if I get the dates wrong there, forgive me. It's roughly around that time. You have Madam Helena Blavatsky, who is a very influential esotericist
Mhm.
within the kind of Western esoteric or Western occultic tradition. Um, and so the Theosophical Society is the largest among the movements affiliated with what she started, and so they had a center in I think it's Altadena. I'm still getting the place names in LA down as a recent transplant, but yeah, they had a library of over 40,000 volumes. We're talking tens of thousands of archived materials, irreplaceable religious artifacts and documents that were lost to the blaze. And so, for members of that tradition, including many others that either have ties or have positive relationships with the Theosophical Society. It was one immeasurable loss out of many others that have
Mhm.
been taking place of late. But yeah, that's just one example of a major site that was impacted by the blaze.
So Jackson, you said you had some resources that people could use. Do you want me to enable the share screen so you can maybe show some of those websites?
Well, I can give them to you,
Okay.
and we can post them in
Okay,
the
so basically
video.
Jackson's going to talk about ways that
Yeah.
people, if they want to support and donate to help this for this devastating
hmm
situation. Talk about some of those resources that people can donate to.
Yeah, so I can say that understandably the local Latter-day Saint community, as well as many other faith communities, but I'll speak particularly to my LDS community because that's what I'm immediately familiar with. The morning after the fires broke out, my ward was able to, rapidly through the efforts of the Relief Society organize relief efforts. So, yeah, just that morning after, we were able to quickly gather and put together over 400 meals for the first responders, who, have been very largely overwhelmed by these fires. Um, that's been quickly followed. That's just an example from my ward, but from the different local stakes and from the church at large, some considerable efforts have been taking place to um, uh, uh, account for kind of multiple things. First, making sure that members are okay, that they are taken care of, to support the first responders and those impacted, those who are displaced, who are in need. Accounting for missionaries. So we've been getting updates uh, on these topics. And if you don't mind, I'll just read a little email that the most recent email I got from my stake president, a snippet of it. He said, quote, I am overjoyed to report that all of our members and missionaries continue to be safe and their immediate needs are being met. While many of our families have been displaced by the fires, we have witnessed remarkable manifestations of Christ-like love as temporary accommodations have been provided for everyone affected. The way our community has come together to support one another is truly inspiring. Our current most pressing need is finding local, long-term, affordable housing solutions for displaced families. We have been deeply touched by the outpouring of love and support from neighboring stakes and our interfaith partners. We are making our church buildings available to our interfaith friends who lost their places of worship. These moments of interfaith cooperation remind us that we are all God's children. And Also saying that in what can only be described as miraculous, the Pacific Palisades Chapel has survived unscathed despite fires burning all around the property. We see this as a beacon of hope for the future recovery and renewal of the Pacific Palisades community in the years ahead. Um, uh, Also saying dozens of stakes have reached out to offer assistance, demonstrating the tremendous bonds of friendship, of fellowship that unite us as disciples of Christ. The church is actively working with local civic, community, and faith organizations to provide aid, and our bishops have resources available to assist individual members in need. Um, the church has also posted an update on the church newsroom, which highlights a few examples of some of the efforts that have been taking place to respond to this tragedy. One of them, for instance, being a donation of 1,500 cases of water to those in need, um, among other efforts. So this is really just the tip of the iceberg. It's going to take a long time, probably, to rebuild and rejuvenate these communities. But in the meantime, there's a lot of people, not just from the Latter-day Saint community, but from other traditions who are actively, helping to, bring that relief. I also want to share for your listeners that my stake tomorrow will be holding a special fast for those impacted within the LDS community. Often fasts are, accompanied by donations of what you would have spent on the food, if not more. It certainly, that's just specific to my stake. But for anyone who's listening that wants to join their prayers, their donations, yeah, it's a time of great need for many. Um, and as far as some resources go, I'll list these or give them to you so that you can include them in the list. But the LA Food Bank, for instance, is accepting financial donations. For those who are local to the Los Angeles area, there are volunteer opportunities that you can sign up for. There are spots for dropping off food donations, non-perishables at different addresses. Um, the YMCA is also another a great organization that is responding to the crisis. Um, uh, and then uh, Another thing that was listed by within my stake was some other ways to support can be sharing information about available, affordable, long-term housing in the LA area, monetary donations through the church's humanitarian fund, fast offerings, and then, of course, just continuing prayers for those who are affected and for the ongoing recovery efforts. So that's just a sampling. I know there are many other organizations, including other faith communities, that are organizing and highlighting their own avenues for support. So this just represents one route, and there's a lot of hands contributing.
Well, we appreciate all those people that are, and that's one thing about this country is when disasters hit, there's always a outpouring of help, and it really shows a lot of good charity that we do, whether you're a believer or not, doesn't matter. People are willing to help people in their times of need. Now, I did see one photo of the LA Temple with fire in the background. As far as you know, the LA Temple's okay? Any issues with
I
that?
believe the temple is fine, yes.
Okay.
And I think yeah, its schedule is set to resume under kind of normal times. So yeah, I know that's also something that a number of Latter-day Saints have been concerned about and praying towards. Um, and yeah, so I think it's doing all right. And of course, outside of our community, there are many others that are in need and could use prayers of support and protection as well.
Well, again, we'll have links to all the stuff for those of you who'd like to donate. There'll be links in the description. And Jackson, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. You reached out to me earlier today, and we just put this together in the last hour or so. Today is January 11th, 2025, and we will be releasing this shortly this evening. And so we just want to get the word out there, just to get the word. If you want to help, if you whether you're locally and you want to volunteer at the homeless shelter, or if you could financially support to these causes during this very difficult and trying time. It's greatly appreciated. And if you aren't even just your thoughts and prayers, I know people like to besmirch that, but I mean, you sometimes can tell when people are thinking about you or praying for you, and that can
Hmm.
uplift your spirit too. I think it's important to be able to, if that's all you can do that too, right?
Hmm.
Jackson, was there any final words you wanted to say before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I think the one other thing that I would add is, whether we're talking about devastating hurricanes in deep red Florida or devastating wildfires in deep blue California, I would hope at the end of the day that for any of us, but especially those who claim to be persons of faith, that our faith is able to, transcend political, social, cultural, other differences and recognize one's shared humanity. Um, I know that God sends his rain on both the just and the unjust, and and at this time, I've been comforted and um, I don't know, have found new salience in a number of passages that I was already familiar with, but that have come to mind. James 1:27, pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction and to keep himself unspotted from the world. You have Matthew 25:35 through 40. For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. Um, I think of Mosiah too. When you are in the service of your fellow beings, you're only in the service of your God, from the Book of Mormon, including passages from scriptures of other faith traditions as well. These times are bigger than any one of us, and I think there's such a power and uh, I don't know, solace in being able to link arms across, spaces of differences. Eh, yeah, I guess I would just hope that before fingers are pointed or any other comments are made with respect to how this can be avoided or what the blame is, perhaps that we focus on what should be the most urgent priorities, which is tending to one another and to those who aren't able to care for themselves. So, yeah, this is a time of relieving burdens, hopefully. But I'm really grateful for the opportunity to come on and share just some of this information. I'd love to hopefully return and speak of different things
Yeah.
um, under different circumstances. But yeah, just appreciate the space that you've offered, Steve.
Thank you, Jackson. Thanks for reaching out, and realizing this is a space that you can reach out to and get the word out. And so we do appreciate you, Jackson. You were one of my earliest interviews back in the day, and we've come our live journeys have we've crossed paths a few times and during this journey. And I've met you the first time at Mormon History Association was the first time I ever went out to Utah for
That's
business
right. That's right.
purposes and really hit it off with you. And it really means a lot to the sense of this community. This really is, this community that we're in, and it's kind of, I love it. I love the people. I love the sense that, even for people who I've never met, they still reach out to me, and I can maybe communicate to them via Facebook Messenger or talk to them on the phone, and to be able to touch people's lives or help them, and then in return, people then can bless me when Mom and I are going through difficult times. And
Right.
so I think
Right.
it's really important to have that sense of community. I think that's really what this is all about. And then thank you for being a good friend, Jackson.
Yeah. Likewise, Steve. I appreciate it.
So, folks, there will be links in the description to financially support these ministries and groups that are out there on the front lines to help in this whole situation. Let's keep everybody in the Los Angeles area, the Pacific Palisades area in particular, keep them in your prayers. This is a very devastating time. It's the amount of area that's been devastated is just almost impossible it just boggles the mind. It substantially dwarfs that of the Great Chicago Fire, just an area alone. And so that's just, I was blown away by that. So this has really been one of the worst disasters of this type in our nation's history. So let's have some perspective here as well. Okay, well, that's it for tonight. It's a little after 7 o'clock here on the East Coast, 4 o'clock there in the Pacific time zone. We will be releasing this shortly once we get everything set up. And let's just keep everybody. Let's hopefully you have a blessed Sunday tomorrow. And I do appreciate everybody. And remember, the most important thing is this: all the voices of the restoration will be heard here on Mormon Book Reviews.